Hey rockers, welcome back to the party, the underground guitar party. Today with a Workshop Wednesdays, we're looking at this Nashville Guitar Works S130 guitar. This is an import guitar, a Chinese guitar from a company that's based out of Fulton, Tennessee, Nashville Guitar Works. They seem to be importing these from facilities that make guitars for other large brands out of China. Today we're going to be looking at this guitar and how it compares to just what it looks like out of the box, the setup and things along those lines. We're really going to be using all the tools you can see here on the desk, from our Allen keys and wrenches, new set of strings. I'm going to put a new nut on there, bone nut, and let's talk about some of the specs of this thing. So this is a Strat style with 3 ceramic pickups, as you could imagine. We're going to check those potentiometers out later, but they're going to be 250K pots, regular stuff like that. Also, we've got a maple neck and a composite fingerboard. We've got 22 medium jumbo frets and pretty high action, standard tuners and the like. We'll find out a little bit more as we go along. Right now I'm just checking to see how the action is set up at the 12th and the 17th frets. I'm also going to check up here just to see what it looks like over at the nut at the 1st fret. It seems like it's pretty high. In fact, you can look at the guitar and tell that it's high. It's playable, but coming to me at the 12th fret, we were 8/64, which is about twice as high as you would want to be. Now, most of the time we're going to measure that electric guitar at the 12th fret, and I'm sighting down the neck and I see there's a big forward bow. I'm going to want to take care of that before we move forward too much, just to see, you know, what we can kind of get that action to before I put the new set of strings on it. So in order to do that, I'm going to take my measurements again and kind of look one more time and see if this truss rod, which is supposed to be double action, turns out to be working. So I'm just checking that relief right here, and I feel like I'm going to be bringing it down, so it's time to bring down the string tension as well. I don't want to be moving the neck too much without loosening some of the tension on the neck so that I can make those adjustments. You don't need to tune down much, just a step would be fine. Now, without any string tension, I'm going to check down the neck again, and it's gone almost completely flat, which means I want to have a little bit of a back bow in it before I put the new set of strings on it in order to help, you know, kind of prepare for that string tension that's going to be pulling forward. We're also going to be setting this up with a larger gauge set of strings, from a extra light to a regular light, from 9s to 10s, and I'm going to have to do some work on the nut, so I want to make sure that I'm ready specific for, you know, any back set that might be. I know you guys like to see this, so here the strings coming off. And you're going to find out sometimes with these import guitars, the tremolo channel where it sits through the block is a little bit smaller than the ball ends, and sometimes the ball ends get stuck. And spoiler alert, I've got something fun waiting for me with several of the strings. They don't want to come out. So flipping it over, we should be able to pull them out pretty simply, just using a little bit of pressure. Kind of open this up a little bit just so that you can see, and you don't have to wait as long to see me do it, but the tremolo cavity looks real nice. Check out that small block back there, you know, it's not too bad. Work is tidy in here. A very small block, and you know, I can't say much more about it. I've seen larger brands not look as clean and tidy as that. It's not expensive, but it doesn't look cheap, if that makes any sense. And here I am, I'm going ahead and getting some of those strings as they come out, and spoiler alert again, I've got to use my low E string to help push some of these strings through. The ball ends are stuck in that soft pop metal for the block. Now, this didn't work. I ended up needing to use a small toothpick, and I had to beat it in there with a dowel. I lost the footage of that for some reason. It wasn't recording. And I beat it in there at the end of a dowel in order to push it straight through. And why might I use a toothpick? Well, it's quite simple. It's soft wood, and it's easy to remove using another toothpick if one gets broken off in there. And that's exactly what happened in these cases. You're usually going to break one off, but it's required to get these out sometimes. And that's a lot of fun, as you could imagine, trying to get these things to come out of those holes. Anyway, I messed around with that for a little bit. They were stuck in there. Ended up getting it out. So now it's time to go ahead and move on to the fingerboard. And there was a lot of work that needed to be done to these frets, specifically the ends. The ends were very sharp. So I started off here with 1500 grit sanding sticks that I've got. And you notice I didn't tape off the board or anything. This is an inexpensive guitar, and it's got that composite fingerboard, which I'll find out later is a lot softer than you would expect. But it took me about 25-30 minutes to get those frets polished up nice and the ends dressed so that they felt good and didn't cut your hands. Now this board, this composite board, is really soaking up this oil. I'm using that Dunlop 65, and here you can see where I kind of nicked that first fret with the end of the quarter file that I was doing. Now I just noticed there that the nut is glued in, and that's going to be problematic later, specific considering that I wanted to replace it with a bone nut. We've got these string trees we're going to work on next though, so let's dive down there. These string trees are just really cheap string trees that come on it, and this is a pretty easy fix when you think about it. It's $4 for some roller trees off of Amazon. If you buy them in a bulk pack, you can get them down as low as about $2. These aren't really expensive roller string trees, but they work well. These string trees are the kind that have the wheel and axle design, so they actually do roll, unlike other string trees, which are just very highly polished ball ends. Taking them off is pretty simple, easy work, and I'm just being aware of the height of these string trees compared to the ones that I purchased. So once I get these guys taken out, I see that they've got some little bushings that they sit on in order to expose them a little bit taller. And we'll put them on the ground and save them for later. I have a feeling we're going to use those screws as well. Yeah, looking at these, I don't know if you can tell right off the bat that these new roller trees, they look nice. They appear to be about the same height, but at the same time, that screw looks to be a lot longer. So as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking through my mind right now that I just can't use that screw. Yeah, no doubt. It's longer than the board. Even sitting up on the string tree like that, I feel like it would go through a little bit too much, a little bit more than the headstock. And making a comparison here, you guys can see just how much longer they are. Yeah. So I did want to do some measurements though, just to make sure that the shorter string trees would actually, or the shorter screws would actually fit properly and give it enough purchase that it needs to actually hold it on. And as I go through here, yeah, they're all going to be just fine. It doesn't hurt to double check though. I measured the total length and then subtracted the length of the head. And looking at the thickness of the headstock, yeah, they'll go in just fine. So when you make all those measurements together, we're still going to have, yeah, we're going to have a little bit more than 2/3, almost 2/3 of the way through. So it'll be just fine. If you ever sit back and watch these videos, let me know what you think. I mean, have you done any kind of work like this? Do you feel confident in doing these types of things yourself, or do you prefer to take it to someone to do this type of stuff? Adjusting the string trees, I've got a nice purchase down there, so the screw is doing its job, and I'm actually going to back this out in order to get it aligned just right. Now there's a couple ways that you can point the wheel and axle part of the string tree. I chose to point them towards the neck in order to increase the brake angle. Most of the time you would actually adjust them so they're facing away from the neck. This is a personal preference in my opinion. However, there are some people that believe strongly about it. You do you, boo-boo, and I'll do me, and this is how I set it up today. So there you have it. Nice string trees. Let's move along over here and get a close look. You see how they sit pretty easily? Look nice. I actually like these a lot, and it's a pretty inexpensive upgrade. But it's time to adjust the tuning machine bushings, and as you can imagine, no matter what guitar you get, big box or name brand or El Cheapo, you're going to need to adjust these. You just always do. And some people have asked me where I get this little wrench from. It's nothing special. I think I got it in a bike kit for something like 10 years ago. I don't even remember. And it just works great for this kind of stuff. Now I'm very careful. Notice that I put my thumb on top of the spanner part so that I can actually make sure it doesn't slip off. Mainly these nuts right here are very shallow, and the wrench itself is pretty thin, so I don't want it to slip and risk damaging any of the headstock. All done. Oh yeah, and don't throw those little string trees away. You might need them for something else. I got a box full of kit that I can use on something. You always need an extra widget, so keep your widgets. And check out this board. This is the third coat, and it's finally starting to pool. You can see some areas that just soaked it in like a sponge. It's time to go ahead and kind of clean these off once again. And here for the big reveal. How do you like this? We're going to go ahead and take the pick guard off. We're going to have a look-see under the hood, so to speak. We'll grab those tone pots, or the tone pot covers those hi-hats. I'm going to change those out later. Let me know what you think. I'm going to change them to black. You saw them as white. And then the big reveal, and well, look at it. It was routed and then finished, which is pretty nice. It wasn't finished and then routed, and there is a whole lot of buffing compound back here. However, there is enough lead on those lines so that I can actually turn the pick guard over, which is pretty nice. So I slide something down so that I can begin the work now. You ready for that shielding montage? Let's hit it. Bask in the opulent glory of copper shielding as it goes down. Enjoy. So this is about 30 minutes worth of work to get this in here like that, and I also did the back of the pick guard real nice. So there you go, closer look indeed. This type of thing is very helpful on less expensive guitars. But now it's time to turn our attention to the pots, and they are 250K pots, and they have a linear taper. They're not audio taper. Believe it or not, that happens to be my preference. I like the linear taper more than I do the audio taper, but I don't really mind so much. It's not a deal breaker for me. Getting that guy put back on there, one thing I'd like to tell you about the pots, they do have 22 microfarad capacitors on there, and they are the dime size pots. So import style pots, but a pot is a pot is a pot, so large or small, these work. Now we're looking at those white hi-hats. I've got some black ones over here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and replace these for the student. If they don't like them, they can have the white ones again, but I noticed that the inking on the white ones was coming off, and I just thought to myself, why not? I had thought about changing over to cream, but I didn't have any cream for the single coil covers, so I didn't. Black seems to do okay for me. What do you think? So I think we're looking pretty good. Matches the sunburst at least. Let's go ahead and check the resistance of the pickups. All we're going to do is plug in the guitar and then tap the leads. It doesn't really matter, red or black. Tip the sleeve. In this instance, we're going to go ahead and get them put down. I have to kind of hold them down. I do make sure not to touch any of the leads with my fingers. I'm just holding them down by the probe ends. Okay, so 4.8. And our position 4 is 2.49. Position 3 is 5. Position 2 is 2.5, and position 1 is 5.1. Position 1 is our strongest, brightest pickup. And these are pretty mellow when you think of ceramic pickups. I like them a lot, actually. All right, time to move on to making sure our pickups are still working. We just tested, so we know that they are, but I also want to make sure that we don't have any issues with microphonics as I'm coming through here. And when I get down to position 1, I find that the single coil pickup in the center, the middle pickup, definitely has a little bit of microphonics continuing, or it's turned on a little bit still, even though it's in the position 1. So that was a little bit dispiriting to find out, but definitely not terrible overall. Okay, with that wrapped up, it's time to get these strings put on. And considering the ordeal we went through earlier, this should be a lot more fun. So today I'm using D'Addario EXL 110s. These are in 10 gauge. Like I said, we gauged up a little bit, so that means there's going to be a little more string tension on the neck. In preparation for that, I have gone ahead and set the neck with a little bit more of a back bow, but we'll see how it goes. I really like D'Addario strings specifically for this. The EXL 110s or 112s are nice sets. I like them a lot. And we're going to go ahead and put them through on this string through design, which is really nice. You get a little closer shot of that 6-point tremolo up there, which is pretty good. And it can be a little tricky. I don't have a bench vise, so I just kind of hold it up underneath one of my arms and pull them through the backside. And once I get them put through, I put them down the other side of my little desk right here. That means that the strings aren't flopping around. It makes it pretty simple. Check out those block saddles. There's a lot of travel on them, and that's an upgrade. I think that they're pretty nicely made, although nothing to write home about, but definitely nicer than you'd find in some other pop metal stuff. They could have gone cheaper here, but they didn't. And that's a nice thing. Turning our attention down to the head of the guitar, making sure that the strings are going to fit, and now we did size up, so we're going to need to widen the nut slots. Now, there's a lot of reasons that you might size up your strings, but one of the main reasons is that it makes it easier to keep in tune when you're playing, because it's less likely that you will bend the string just by fretting a chord. If you're a new player and you get a guitar from a big box store or your local store, and you find that you're having a hard time playing and tuning sounds difficult for you, like when you go to make your G chord, and your G on your E string sounds out of tune or something, that's usually done because you're slightly bending the string with pressure, and it's more noticeable on your D chord with the B string and stuff like that. So sizing up a gauge definitely helps quite a bit. I have also found that not having that really thin spaghetti pizza wire for the 9, I've also found that gauging up helps new players with just comfort. It doesn't hurt their fingers as much while they're building calluses. So I've gone ahead and measured my string length. You'll notice that I usually take about 2 posts past the post that I'm going to be stringing up. And right now I'm working on filing. I've just got a small rat tail file, and I'm trying to widen, not deepen. So I'm being very cognizant of not going deeper, but making sure the lines are cutting straight as well as widening. And it's very simple to just burn straight through this plastic nut. So it's something you have to really make sure to take care of. Now, running the string back and forth, I'm just testing to make sure that it feels good and it's going to be able to tune properly. You definitely don't want that string getting caught up in the nut while you're tuning. That will make tuning stability difficult, and it will cause popping and creaking sounds. It just will make the whole thing less playable. Having a properly cut nut, whether it's bone or plastic or some other material, is very important to your just playability, ease of playing, and how you feel about the guitar overall. I have found that fret ends that feel smooth and nice and a properly cut nut will do much more for someone's opinion of a guitar than anything else that's out there. Everything else, after you pick it up and feel it in your hand, takes second priority. If it feels terrible to begin with, you're not going to like how it sounds, most likely, even if it sounds great. So getting back to the task at hand, I just wind it around. Of course, we're winding up so that the posts can do their job. And I'm looking at this. I go ahead and add some string tension to it because you can go ahead and allow the strings to begin tightening and lengthening just by stretching and tuning it up to pitch. So second verse, same as the first, right? Go through, make sure that the widening that I did of the nut worked. I count up by a total of 2 posts, specifically on the wound strings, cut it off, put it through. You guys get the drill. Wind, 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 wind. And be careful not to get your finger stuck, and be careful not to poke your finger on that little piece of string that keeps coming around. Also notice that I loop over once and then go underneath, so my first turn around goes over top of the piece of string that's sticking out, and all the subsequent turns go underneath it. This could be personal choice and preference. I happen to like it. So you do you, I'll do me, and we'll continue from there. So we are all strung up, and I want to check my action and see what these new gauge strings, the tension has done to the neck. And I did put a back bow in it, and checking right here, we're doing pretty good so far. We're right about 6/64ths, and that's pretty close to it. I can see that we need to come down some more. I want to be around 4 or 5/64ths, so I've got to adjust these block saddles, and I'm going to take them all the way down to the deck. Now, once I got the strings put on, I noticed that the trim had pulled up, so I did adjust the trim, and I didn't show that on camera, but I pulled it nice and level. Although most people like to make these hardtails, this trim seems to be quality enough to hold tune, and I'd like to give it the opportunity to do that. And also for the player that's going to get this guitar, they may want to use it, so I'm going to set it up to have a properly working trim right now. If we turn out that the trim's no good, we can adjust it again later and make it into a hardtail. That's easy. What I am noticing is that these worm screws right here, these grub screws, are full length, and the blocks themselves have the screw positions. The threads are at the top of the block, which is really nice. That means that if you did need to raise these saddles, you could, and the grub screw would disappear. But because I need to basically deck these saddles other than the radius of the fretboard, to match it, most of these grub screws are sticking up. So I've got a couple of options. The first one is to lop off each one after I determine the proper height, or the other option is to replace with some additional grub screws later. Now, replacing parts and adding a nut isn't something that's part of a traditional setup, so in this instance, I'm not going to do either. I'm going to set them up as they are, give the customer the option, the player the option, and then go from there later. But for right now, we're going to leave them as they are. And I'm checking, and I'm getting right down to 5/64ths. I'm going to have another adjustment here in just a moment. I want to see just how low I can get them, but before I go any further, I want to make sure I don't get any rattle. And so since some of these have actually hit the deck, it means that there's no tension on the end of the post, which means that the grub screw could rattle when playing. So now I'm going back and adjusting so that there's just enough of the grub screw sticking out beneath the block that it will be held properly with that string tension and there won't be any rattling. This is an important thing. There's rattles and buzzes that can come on electric guitars from pretty much anything. I guess that's true of any guitar, but here I'm just paying close attention to make sure that I don't have to deal with that later. Okay, feels good. At least they're not sharp on the top. Because they're all chrome plated, they're pretty soft. I like that. Now it's time to get another look a little bit closer and see where we are. Okay, so here we're about 5/64 on the bass and about 4/64 on the treble side. So everything looks good up there at the 15th fret. So that means it's time to see how it feels in playing position. Let's go ahead and check it out. Action feels good up at the nut. I don't hear any buzzing down there. You can see that low E. If that low E buzzes, you probably get buzzes everywhere else. But no, I'm working up in the first positions and everything, doing some strumming. Yeah, feels pretty good. Okay, so now that's done, it's time to set up the pickup heights. This is real important, specific to ceramic pickups, or any pickup really. Too close to the string and you can get microphonics, too far away and you can lose volume and clarity. So it's really a mix of the both, right? Now, for me, I like to set up the bass strings closer than the treble strings, which means I like to angle the treble strings, the treble side of the pickup further away. This is against traditional wisdom. I usually do this because I don't like the nasally sound that you get when your treble strings are too close. If you do, you can set it up that way. Here today, I'm going to raise the bass strings up because I usually like a little bit more bass, and I like clarity in my bass strings. The further away that you get from the pickup pole piece to the string, the less clarity you get, the more mellow sound. So I like a little more clarity in the bass. That's why I put them a little closer. I find that treble strings on those treble pickups can be really twangy, so I put them further away to try to mellow them out a little bit. Doing so also decreases volume, but as higher pitched notes are sometimes perceived as louder than their same frequency and same loudness, lower pitched notes, I don't think that it minds too much. In any event, this is a personal preference, and I would suggest that if you've got pickups on your guitar, check it out, give them a shot, change them up, see how you like them. They're easy to adjust with just a Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, everything's looking good. Time to move up to action at the 1st fret. Now, as we're looking at this, remember I was going to change that nut out, but I didn't because the material of the fretboard seemed to be brittle and that nut was glued in, so it's just going to stay the way it is. I'm finding that I'm over 22 thousandths tall at the 1st fret, which is just a little bit higher than I'd like to be. Generally, I like to be around 15 to 18, 20 as a happy medium, but if I can get down to 18, I'll take it. Now, my business card right here, you guys may know I'm a photographer. Photography is something I love, but I do it for my work. Music is something that I got to tell you is my passion, which is why I do these types of things. So one of my go-tos is how thick is my business card, and does my business card fit underneath there comfortably? My business card is 15 thousandths. I'm going to go ahead and give you a shot of that right here, upside down so that you can see it. Right? And you can see that we're at 15 thousandths. And I know that when I can get my business card in there on a neck that's slightly forward bowed, enough so that it's not completely flat, and saddles that are set up between 4 and 5/64 on the bass at the pickup side, I know that we're going to be good and not have any buzzing. If you're a real hard chunker, we might set it up to be a little bit taller, but that's something in this instance I would do by moving the saddles a little higher rather than the nut lower. Okay, so it's time to check it out. I want to show you how we've set this up so far. And we've got our E to our 12th fret, our octave. Beautiful, right? And we've got our A. It's looking good. As I'm talking about this, you'll know that this guitar is already showing this intonation right now, and I have not even adjusted the blocks forwards or backwards. This is excellent intonation for this gauge of string, straight out of the guitar, straight out of the box, so to speak, and I'm very, very pleased with it. Of course, when I intonate a guitar, I like to let the string settle in for a day or so before I actually get into the intonation. So that's something I would do at another lesson. Remember this. So since this was a student's guitar, it's something that I can check out later. Before I move on, I want to share with you some sounds, so let's hit it. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please help out the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Bye for now.